Good morning, Singapore. Hey, Adi Tatarko on stage. Come on. Good morning, Singapore. All right, all right, all right. Good morning, Adi.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. So typically, as the first question, we say, hey, can you give us an elevator pitch of your company? But I think we have something better than an elevator pitch. We have a video all about Houzz. So let's take a quick look right now.
Sounds good.
My sister's house is in St. Louis. We are going to use the technology of Houzz to redesign every detail of my sister's home. That's sectional. I love it. I want it. Okay. It has everything you need from start to finish.
I'm very pregnant, so thank God for Houzz.
The chandelier, it's long, it's sculptural.
Let's buy it. It's made this entire experience so much easier than ever.
Okay, ready? Okay.
If anyone is knocking down that wall, it's me. I'm Mila Kunis, and this is my house. I can't believe this is the same space.
Look at that. That's a lot packed. Yeah. Big round of applause. There's a lot packed into that video. You guys are so busy.
We have good video people in Houzz, but yes, we are very, very busy. And it's a nice presentation, I think, to show that we're really trying under one roof to address all the different needs that come from our community. And I think that comes out very well in this video.
It does. So I have one follow-up question. How do you get these celebrities? How can I meet Mila Kunis?
They just love Houzz.
They just love Houzz. Okay, I need to make a really good product.
They really do, and I think that celebs like to work with top brands because their brand is also important to them, and they love technology. So.
Well, I have 10 Instagram followers, Adi. I don't want to say too much, but this might be a huge opportunity to break into Singapore, Japan market.
Okay.
But yeah, speaking of Singapore market, you've been here for a year now. You just celebrated your year anniversary. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know a lot of folks are using it these days. And we want to talk a little bit today about the international expansion. We want to talk a bit about how Adi's become such a successful fundraiser as well. But first, before we get to international expansion, we need to have a product first. So Houzz has an amazing reputation for being very user-centric, very product-focused. So first, I want to kind of understand a little bit more about your process and how you have created such a powerful, popular product. You know, #1 most top-rated on Google Play is a really amazing accomplishment. So the first question is, what are some early user insights that you gained during the start of the company that kind of led to rapid growth in an admittedly crowded industry?
So you're saying two things here. Crowded industry, well, maybe, but very fragmented, lack of technology, and very different from what we see today with Houzz and the technology that it's introduced. In terms of the community, we were the first two users, Alana and I, and it was very important for us to really create a product that we would enjoy using. And so we put our user experience as well as our small community user experience. We started it with 20 parents from our kids' school as our top priority. And we said, this is something that we're not going to compromise because product and user experience should always, always come first. And we keep that mission to date, that always come first. You actually see that business and monetization followed when, and of course the user growth, when you put the right things at the top of your priorities.
So you're talking about the fragmented nature of the industry, and also I think you mentioned a certain lack of technology. So you kind of brought that into the home design industry. What were some things that maybe other companies were not focusing on that you did? Was the silver bullet having just a better technical solution, having like that kind of ease of use?
So when we experienced not so much a wonderful attempt to renovate our house, we wanted to do 3 things, and each one of them was really broken. One, we wanted to find great ideas and express what is it that we want to do with the right verbiage to the professionals, the architects and contractors of the industry and so on. And it was not a great experience. The second was being able to find these great professionals that will be right for us and what we're trying to do. And it was mainly happening by word of mouth and very, very limited. And last, we saw all these great products and materials in tons of books and magazines that we bought, but we had no clue where to buy them, how to source them, how much they cost. So we tried to solve all this in that product. And apparently, we were not the only ones, not just in the US, apparently all over the world, that felt that this is a very, very broken process, while the dreams are up there in terms of what you want to do to your home.
Right, and so you said you got some of these insights based off of your own experience with your husband, who's also co-founder of the company, as well as talking with the 20 parents who went to your kids, who were also part of your kids' school. So that's how you kind of gathered those early user insights. But now you're massive. You have 40 million registered users. So how do you keep up with the changing needs of your users? Is it surveys? Is it focus groups? What's your approach to understanding users these days?
Yep. So from the beginning, it was indeed 20 parents that were the homeowners with us that started the local project, as well as professionals from the industry, architects, designers, and contractors, and so on. And when we grew the community, we kept being in touch with these 2 groups of the 2 sides of the marketplace on an ongoing basis. And even last night in Singapore, celebrating our 1-year anniversary of Houzz Singapore, it was so much important for me to be there in person, because I got so much feedback from professionals, not just about how wonderful and great and what it's doing to their business, but also all the ideas and what can take it to the next level. And this is something that we've been doing constantly from day one, listening, getting the feedback, and then assessing what's the right big thing to do next.
So you take this kind of feedback from face-to-face conversations and
surveys, of course,
right.
And all other usual interactions that people can have with their community.
And so now you have the raw data, but how do you decide, okay, we have so many different options that people want us to make. How do you just say, okay, this is the right feature for us? What's the internal discussion like? How do you make that final decision?
I have to say it's always a combination of getting and collecting the feedback from everybody in the community on all sides, as well as doing lots of A/B testing and trying different things. Sometimes something that we think like, oh, that's going to be really significant is not ending up being so big. But other things, then we say, okay, let's give it a try, and all of a sudden you get explosion. So it's important to keep this happening all the time. Testing it. I will say the community give us very good direction of what to do next. Early days, it was the community that basically pushed us towards the global expansion. It started with the ideas. This smaller group of parents and community in the Bay Area told us, it's really nice, but we want to see more what's happening in Europe and in Asia and other parts of the world. Can you include more community members and more content from other parts of the world? So here you go, we did that, and so forth. So,
okay, so one last question on the user side. So I think a lot of us in the audience are working in startups or have founded startups, and we know that we need to talk to users, but there's so much advice out there of you need to ask this question or don't ask that question. What are just like a couple tips you have for ways to ask questions or the sorts of questions you should be asking users to really understand or to get the best answers?
So when it comes to professionals in the industry, for example, and we have 1.6 million active professionals on the platform, it's very important that they'll describe how the industry is structured in their area or in their country, as well as how they operate within that structure and what would make it better for them. So that's a first step. And then later on, lots of them are sharing different ideas of what they think that would make it better. And you don't you just don't push that. You just get all this feedback, and then when you are ready with kind of products ideas, you can test it, you can ask it, and then you can go ahead and roll out some of them and see the reaction.
Right.
Same with the users. I mean, I can tell you that many people call the office. We already had a robust business channel on the professional side, but many professionals and homeowners call the office because we had these little green tags on all the photos, and people wanted to know what's going on. They can't find the add to cart. They wanted to be able, okay, we share the data, what is it, where you can get it, but they couldn't get it on Houzz, and they said, where is the add to cart? Or can you ship this bathtub to Alaska? And the more we've heard about it, we basically understood they want us to close that loop for them.
Right.
And then that triggered the whole new discussion of should we build that channel under one roof and really close that loop for the users, which you know ended up as a big decision that worked well.
Yeah, it worked very well. So some of the new things that have come out are the sketch, it's the 3D in my home like we saw in the video, also the marketplace. So these are all kind of major steps you've taken to keep your users happy that have worked out very well. Was there anything of those of your recent feature additions that almost didn't make the cut?
I think that on the marketplace front in general, before we even decided to do it, because it's a huge project to basically build a whole marketplace from scratch under one roof. We're already doing lots of other things. And I recall a conversation with somebody that we really appreciate his opinion when we always get different ideas from investors and mentors and other founders and just brainstorm with them. And when we said, look, you know, the users are really directing us towards a marketplace. They're asking these questions. They are saying it's going to be a better experience. They already have the inspiration, the community support, the ability to find the professionals. They know that we share a lot of information about the products, but the inability to get it all from us, it's a burden. And we're seriously considering having the marketplace. And he looked at us and he said, "You are nuts." And we said, "Why? It's what the community really, really wants, and they are so passionate about it." And he said, "The fact that you already have an amazing," and we were sitting in a coffee place when this conversation happened, and he said, "The fact when you already have a great coffee place where people enjoy coming and socializing there and doing different things and buying the coffee from you, doesn't mean that now you need to go and buy the cows and produce the milk by yourself. You know, this is crazy." And, you know, we brainstorm a lot with lots of people. At the end of the day, it felt not against other people, but it felt the right things to do for the community. Even though it's hard, even though it's crazy, even though we were already busy with many other things, the user experience would be so much better. The users want it, let's do it.
So when you make that decision, did that put the biggest stress in the company on the engineering side, the project management side? Like you said, it's almost creating this whole other business inside of what you already have. So does that create like a big, you have to hire all these new people? Like what's the next step once you make that critical decision?
You have to remain very, very focused. So obviously, if you are shifting, or now we need to bring more people on board, shifting people from focusing on one thing to the other things, and in our case, doing things in parallel, you obviously need to grow the team. without compromising quality, which is very important to us. So it was a big project, both on the engineering side and the operational side, but this is what we know to do. If we have a mission and we know what is it that we need to do and where is it that we're trying to get and why, everybody in the company can come together and support that mission.
And it's grown like tenfold, if I remember the number of listings properly. It's like tens of millions now. It's in just 18 months?
Yeah, so we launched a beta 2.5 years ago, and later on in 2015, so about 2 years, fully opened it up, the marketplace. We now have over 8 million products available to buy directly from Houzz, from almost 20,000 different sellers and vendors in the marketplace.
And I'm sure some of these folks are overseas as well, which I think is a good segue into the international expansion. So earlier you mentioned that one of the reasons why you started looking overseas is because your original users were saying, we want to see what's happening in Europe, we want to see what's happening in Asia. So you went to Europe first, and now in Asia, for the past few years, you've opened in Japan, in Singapore, in Australia, and in India earlier this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So for all of these markets, did you have to come up with a new playbook for the Asia region, or just the lessons that you learned in expanding throughout Europe kind of still apply to this part of the world?
Let's start with our playbook in general works very well for us in terms of we first invest in the product and user experience. I know I said it before, but it's very important. And then we build the community and the content and make sure that the local community and the local product is a good fit for the industry in that specific country. Commerce comes always after the community and content and after we customize the product based on the needs. And it works well. It doesn't mean that the customization of the product or the structure of the industry in each country is identical. It's not. And this is why we want to devote the right time and build the right teams to support the industry as much as possible.
So when you look at the different markets, is it something where, I know that some companies will say, okay, so we have a playbook, and by month 3 we've accomplished this, by month 6 we've accomplished this. What's your experience with those sorts of timelines?
So we're doing things the Houzz way, and the Houzz way is keep getting the feedback from the community. We want to build the right product and a healthy marketplace, because like in the US and in Europe, in Asia as well, the key here is to have that great collaboration and interaction between all parties in the ecosystem, right? So we have the homeowners, we have the professionals, many different, 60 different groups of professionals, from architects, designers, builders, landscapers, and so on, and vendors and sellers. And so we want to make sure that we build a healthy balance, and we are addressing the content and the community discussion the way the industry needs it, right? It's not just what we imagine you need, it's what you're telling us you need. Singapore is very different.
Yeah, so how is Singapore?
Way more apartments than homes, so I can write about single family homes in the US as much as I want, but users here in Singapore want to hear about small spaces, and that's very important to them. How do you maximize, you know, what you have? Because 80% here is smaller spaces and mainly apartments, and this is what we need to do. Government owned, there are different structure here of how you can apply. I don't need to teach you that, but it's very, very different, and we work with the professionals to address the different opportunities. I want to say opportunities and not challenges, because these are opportunities to bring the industry to the next level.
Would you say that Japan and Singapore are similar in that respect?
I actually think that there are lots of differences, especially Japan is the second largest market in the world for home remodeling. But the trajectory there and the history is a little bit different than Singapore and any other country I know. In Japan, for many years, people used to buy only new dwellings, new homes, whether apartments or single-family homes, only new, and live in them for 70 years or all their lives. And everything was pretty much monopolized by big companies that built lots of apartments together. They worked with the professionals, not the homeowners themselves. And people were not used to buying second homes like we do in the US or in other places. And now the government is pushing the tax deduction for reform. They want the younger generation to buy homes and own homes and to buy these second-hand homes. There are 14% of the homes in Japan are actually vacant, believe it or not. So there is a very big push from the government, and I think that Houzz coming there right on time to really bring all the pieces together and help this new generation buy the homes and remodel them or reform them, as they call it in Japan.
And so now let's talk a little bit about Australia and India. So for Australia, is that a bit more similar to, say, the EU or to what you experienced in the States?
So in general, EU is probably, in terms of number of people in Australia, is one of our most penetrated, if not the most penetrated markets.
Oh, wow.
Both professionals and homeowners, they are avid users. They are serving their own market as well as branching out. We're hearing lots of stories from professionals in Australia that already interacted with clients in Singapore, the Philippines. They are buying land in Australia and they are remodeling it for them, or flying around to Asia to conduct work. And now we started hearing, and yesterday I got a few examples from it, professionals from Singapore and Japan are conducting work in other parts of the world. Last year at the Houzz one-year anniversary party, I had an architect that told me an amazing story of one of our users in Portland, Oregon, that reached out to him and said, look, I want to build a Japanese-style home. Why should I settle with a professional from the US? It's not the original stuff. Why don't you do it for me? And he's doing it for him. So it's really opened up the borders for everybody.
Yeah, that sort of cross-pollination, I think, is a really fascinating part of the business. And now with India as well, like that's a whole nother level of style, of design, of home ownership. But you guys just started. I think you launched in January or February.
Yeah, and you know what? There are two things that we're looking at when we decide to launch the platform in a new market, and we're now live in 15 markets outside of the US. We are looking, one, at the local interest of the community to help us, change the landscape of the industry and help us localize the product for them and for the sake of their users that they work with. That's very important. And the second thing is, what is the global interest from our global community in that specific country? And if we see lots of searches for Indian products, for Indian styles, that's a great indication, especially when it comes from different countries around the world. So in India, before we launched it, we already had 50,000 active Indian professionals using the platform every month, for their business, collaborating with clients, and 1 million Indian users using the platform before we localize it. That was a great indication, on top of course, all the global searches for Indian products and styles. So we said, okay, here's our next market.
Absolutely. So next is, so let's see, is going up north, so Singapore, India, China, maybe next? Or just skip right to Russia?
I think we actually are live in Russia.
Oh, okay. So you're set. You have both sides.
We do have Russia. It's very important for us to be very focused on building it right and giving the right attention to each country. As I mentioned, the industry is not structured the same in each country. It's different. Different professions operate. The dynamic is different. We need to customize the product, and we want to give all these countries the right attention and build the business based on the demand from the community. But we're going to get to other parts. Stay tuned.
Okay. I understand. So part of doing this sort of expansion does require fairly deep pockets. And one thing that I think is so great about Houzz is that you stay very user and product focused. But to be fair, you are also valued at like $2.3 billion. There's a rumor out there of maybe some additional funding that could push that even as much as 2x or more higher. And so when we're talking about these sorts of funding opportunities, it's something which I think a lot of folks in this audience are also thinking about, like, how do I get my own VC round? How do I get a seed round, Series A round, or whatever? So I'm wondering if we can take a few moments to talk about, I guess, your approach to fundraising, because it's the proof is in the pudding. It's been pretty successful so far. For starters, what's just a couple of basic do's and don'ts for someone who's approaching raising money from VCs?
So one thing that we learned in retrospect, but I think it was one of the best things that happened to us as founders, we basically bootstrapped our company. It wasn't a company, it was a side project, but by the time we decided to bring investors in, we already had a live product, lots of traction, hundreds of thousands of monthly users, thousands of professionals as part of the platform, and so on. And that made our process so much different from what we are hearing from different founders that share their stories with us. And I think when I analyze it, there are two things when you are first-time entrepreneur. Let's say you don't have that record. I've built tons of billion-dollar companies and everybody is going to give me money. So let's assume that's not the case and it's the first time. Investors would want to ask two questions, you and themselves. One, they're going to talk about the idea, and you will need to convince them that your idea is actually something that can scale and be very big and appealing to lots of people, because it's the numbers game. Yeah. It's very important to them. Two, even if you'll prove that number one is there and it's a great idea and you sold them on the idea all the way, they'll still ask the question, are you the right people to run it and scale it and bring it to that potential? I think that many entrepreneurs that I see are spending a lot of time creating these presentations and decks and models, racing, trying to get investors to like them and like their idea and give them the money. And then what happens? Every investor gives them a different advice and want to tweak it here and change the idea there, and only if you do that, and they go back and they keep changing it and tweaking it, so that one investor will fall for the whole presentation. And that's a problem, because instead, if you could first prove to yourself that your idea is actually a good one, not just appealing to you, but appealing to many other people, now you answered yourself and future investors the exact same question. You also solve for the second one, because if you scaled it to a certain level, nobody will question your abilities. And I will tell you that the fact, again, we didn't plan it, it happened, but the fact that we bootstrapped it was the best thing that happened to us in so many different fronts, but also fundraising. Because investors didn't have to ask, is it a good idea? We already hundreds of thousands of people using it every month, and we didn't even invest any money in it. It was just us doing it while working full-time in other places. And nobody questioned whether we can scale it or not, doing it without any resources. I think it also gives you a great opportunity to be on top of who is going to give you the money. And that is one of the most important things that you'll need to take care of. Because if you're coming from a weakness position, you'll take any money from whoever. You may end up with a bad partner around the table that later on would be a bad thing for your company and for you in general, and you may end up with bad terms. And you can avoid all this and actually choose the best investors and the best partners. They'll come after you if you'll just spend the first 6 months to 1 year of not creating presentations and not pitching, but really building and proving a concept. That's my best recommendation. I think everything else after that makes it so much easier for you.
Yeah, so I want to pick up on one of the last things you said about terms. So this is something where I think now that more and more investors are blogging and more entrepreneurs are also blogging about the process, there's a little bit more visibility on it. But I still get the sense that there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things that are unknown, and you have like these terms that are like 5 words strung together, and you don't know if it's a financial concept or a legal concept. Since you've been in a position to choose your terms, what are some terms that you have pushed back against that you felt like, that's not what I want for my company?
Yeah, so one step before that, I will say it's not enough to choose great firms to back you. You should also choose the right individuals in these firms, because in firms, and I don't know if we have investors here today or not, but if we do, I'm sure that they will nod their head, or at least do it in the dark. You have different type of investors. And some are very experienced. They were even entrepreneurs by themselves, and they crossed the lines to the other side. Could be a huge advantage. And some are not, and some are very painful to work with, and some are a pleasure to work with. So the ability to choose the individual is very, very important, especially when it comes to the first investors. Now, when I say good investors, I mean the ones that would not use the fact that you are new to this and you've never done it before, but will be honest with you and will tell you, look, this is why these terms are founder-friendly. And this is why this term is going to protect your employees forever if you'll just keep this term with all the VCs that will come after me. We had a very, very fortunate, I don't know how else to describe it, because really we could have met different people to choose a very, very good first investor. And he put in front of us a term sheet that was super founder-friendly and super employee-friendly for later on. That means you want to make sure that the control will always stay in your hands as founders. And the control of what's going to happen to your employees will always stay in your hands as much as possible. And if you have the first agreements friendly this way, that puts all the decision-making and all the control in your hands, it's going to make it much, much easier later on. It's not easy if you get a first agreement that is taking these rights and these protections from you and move it to the other side. Believe me, others will come in later stages. They will want at least exactly the same, if not more. So it's very helpful to look and just think about it. Is what I have in front of me going to protect everybody? Or if they'll change the partner that will leave the firm later on, now I'm in the hand, of these investors. If you look at that, you'll know what are the right terms there.
So when you say protection, you're talking about dilution or preferred shares. Like I know the one thing that's been a topic recently is companies get larger or they scale up a bit, they get in new funding, and maybe the employee ESOP suddenly got a little bit more diluted. And so now, like, the value isn't quite what you thought it was before. Are you talking about terms that protect against situations like that, or is there something else that you were referring to?
Everything, and I will say there were companies that put in the hand of the investors to the ability to strip away the unvested stock, for example, just one example, from employees, and put it in the hands of the investors in terms of who will control this decision later on versus the company. And look, the people that you're going to hire are going to be the ones that are going to build it with you. Without them, there is no company, and you're going to become their partners first and foremost. And you want to protect them. You want them to be happy. Even if they're not aware of it, you need to do the right thing because you want to attract the right talent, and you need to know that you're doing it from a good place. You know that what you're offering them is clean, and there is no such a thing that later on somebody will come and pull the rug, underneath, and they are stripped from all their rights. And we definitely got all this in place because of great first investors that we had.
Yeah, is it ever too early to establish rules about who can make the decision on sale of a company or IPO or things of that nature? Is that something that, for instance, was that something included in your first seed round deal, or is that something that came in as you started to get a bit larger?
As a principle, I would say if you're coming from a strong position to your first round or second round, you want to keep the control of all these decisions in terms of the company makes the decisions. And you want to have control of the board. You want to be able to be dominant at the board. You don't want to strip yourself from all these decisions, definitely not at the beginning. And ideally, you can keep that momentum later on. This is what I'm saying, but it all goes back to the position that you're at when you're raising the money, because if you're at the position, well, I either get money from someone or I won't be able to do it at all. So of course you'll have to give up, and people will take it from you. They will want to have all the rights. They will want to make decisions, whether it's an M&A opportunity or IPO. They will try to put all this in. But if you're in a position that multiple investors want to give you their money and you need to choose, and they're all great individuals and great investors, nobody will take it away from you. They will want to give you as much as possible. Just take the money from them.
Yeah.
Focus on the right thing from the beginning. It will really help you on that front.
So on this front, you talk about choosing the right individual, but there's also the idea of maybe being associated with the right VC brand. If it comes down to it, and you have maybe 2 offers on the table, amazing brand, everyone would be like, oh man, Adi's amazing. Amazing brand, so VC, or like really a VC that you feel like a super strong connection with, you think like this is really the right individual, but the name brand isn't there, but the money is the same. Which way are you leaning towards?
I want the best VC and the best individual in that firm, and I can get that if I'm coming to it from the right place. Mm-hmm. Each one of our rounds later on were actually situations where investors came to us, and we were able to choose and found the best investors and the best individuals that we felt are right for us. I think that there was one thing that our first investor told us, and it's really a very good advice. You want investors that will see you as the driver of this project, this company, this car. And not just say it, do it. Our first investor said, this is your ride, this is your direction, you build it, and you know how to keep growing it. I'm gonna sit in the back seat, and you can call me at any point in time, wave if you wanna ask me questions, if you want me to help you, I'm here. But it's your ride, and I'm here to support you, and not vice versa. If you think about it, and you talk to different investors, and they start requesting all kinds of things that would take you away from your focus and from your mission, and you'll know that you're going to spend your time creating reports and pleasing their LPs, and doing things that are really going to put a lot of burden on you as founders early days, instead of them telling you, and I will tell you what they told us. Call me if you want to convince a candidate in that crazy competition to join your company and not me. Just call me, even if it's in the middle of the night. I'll talk to that candidate. That's what I want to hear the investor. They need to pitch you, and you need to put yourself in a position that you're not weak and you're not taking any money whatsoever. And yes, branding is very important, because if you bring great VCs on board, it's definitely very helpful on the recruiting front, and in general, the level of caliber that you can bring to the company. So it's very important to do both.
Absolutely. So now you have, you've made a VC relationship, you've taken the funding. How do you keep the relationship strong over time? So there's certainly, like, you have regular board meetings, I'm sure, and you send reports here or there. But besides that, like, what are the things that both VC and founder need to do to kind of keep a healthy relationship? Because there are ups and downs, of course, in any company. So what are some of the things that people need to do? Is it as simple as just getting a casual coffee, not talking about work, just kind of maintaining a personal connection? What's your take on that?
I think that each founder is different, and there is no one right way of doing it. I have my personality, and I know many other great founders that have very different personalities, and we all build very different cultures, and they're all good in their own way. For us specifically, we felt that we are kind of a small family, the Houzzers, everybody that work at Houzz, and every single individual, whether it's an investor or people that come to work in the company or partners, are welcome into that family, and we want to have that great relationship, and it's way beyond just give me a better return or grow my investment as soon as possible. And you know it, because you talk to other founders and you talk to the individuals. So that's what works for us. It's definitely way beyond board meetings. It's very personal. I can tell you that I had many times investors come to my house and with their barefoot sit on the sofa and brainstorm different ideas of you know, what's the next great thing that we can do together, or talk about challenges and how we can create opportunities out of all these challenges. So it's a very different dynamic. I don't need, and I call them in the middle of the night if I want, and they will wake up and have that call. And that's the level of relationship. And nobody ever talks to me through secretaries, because that's what I want. Look, I'm not having any secretary talking with anyone in my life. You know, these are my partners, and I don't need them to send secretaries. And so you set up the ground rule that is right for you, and you are who you are with your beliefs and your focus, and they invested in you because they like you and the way you're doing things, and you should keep that very, very consistent all the way. I said, you know what? I'm a woman, I'm proud of it. I'm a mom, I'm proud of it. I'm not gonna pretend whenever I'm gonna have a conflict that I have something that came up, I'm so sorry, I need to reschedule.
Yeah.
I will be very blunt. And when Sequoia joined Early Days, and they invited us to their first annual event of all their parties, and we were really looking forward to be part of the Sequoia family. And guess what? They sent us the invitation, and it fell on our son's birthday. And I said, never. And so I called Alfred, and I say, hey, Alfred, I'm so sorry. We were so excited about being part of this event and being part of the Sequoia family. I guess that this year, it's not going to work out. It's our son's birthday, and I never miss my kids' birthdays. And you know what? That set up the tone for other partners that are not women, our parents though, we are all human beings, to come and say, hey, do you mind moving the board meeting? I have a teacher-parent conference at preschool. That set up the right conversation and the right relationship.
Yeah. For that sort of dynamic, is that something that you can still expect for later stage investors who maybe from the outside looking in, it seems like when you get certain institutional investors coming in to larger companies like yourself, it seems like they've come in for one purpose, which is to get a certain return. And I don't know, do you still have the same sort of dynamic with them, or is that a different sort of conversation?
People are people. Let's start with that. We're all human beings. At every stage, you want to get great people around the table. And I always tell people, if you're not going to be happy with the way we are doing things, then just don't join and don't give us your money. Right. If you're joining, you're obligated to be happy in good and in bad, you know, and we are going to have cycles and we're going to have challenges, but you're going to be part of it and be happy that you're part of it and you're part of this family. And that's, you know, the key thing here. Besides that, I will say that there is a very big difference between early stage investors and growth stage investors. Not in terms of you want the best people out there, in terms of their capabilities, what you need from them at this stage. And actually, this is another opportunity to really optimize. There are some great investors that would be wonderful supporting entrepreneurs at early stages. Been there, done that, been entrepreneurs that scaled relevant companies by themselves, great. Some of them may be able to support you all the way to your IPO and many years after. Some may not be so applicable, and vice versa. You have some great people that have lots of experience at the growth stages. They worked in big companies as executives. They helped lots of founders take their companies public, and they are great, great investors at these stages. Not necessarily the right ones to back you when you're just starting and give you what you need at this point. And you need to learn who are the right folks for each stage. The ones that you bring at the beginning are the most important ones, because they're not going to disappear even though when you get to growth stages. You want to bring people that can run with you, and you'll be happy to run with them and partner with them for the long term. I feel that we were more than blessed. We have Oren that joined the first round, and then Alfred Lin from Sequoia that joined right after, 6-7 months after. And both these guys have been phenomenal. They are great, they are friends, they are supportive. It doesn't mean that everything we say, they say, amen. No, we have great debate and great conversation, and they have very different point of view and different things, but this is what makes it so much fun. And I love it.
Well, I don't know if we can come up with like a better way to finish this session. That was really amazing. Thank you for those insights on how to handle VC relations.
Sure.
So just in wrapping up, I don't know if you guys know this, but definitely Adi is based in Silicon Valley. It's actually like a 17-hour airplane ride from San Francisco to Singapore. So she really did make a huge effort to come out here. And I just can't thank you enough for making that effort and being our first speaker for the 2017 edition of this conference. So please, one more round of applause for Adi Tatarko.
Thank you.